Great. So that was a great demo. Honestly, I've never been so scared of Marine Corps folks until that came up, so thank you for that. Our next session is going to be about an actual case study, so how to implement NHI inside of an enterprise. It's a fireside chat without the fire, so we'll call it a monitor side chat. Gary, Owen, and Carl Siva are going to be here to talk about that. Gary is the Chief Information Security Officer at iCapital. He's been doing this for over 20 years. He was also at Wells Fargo, Time Warner, and Goldman Sachs. Definitely knows what he's doing. Carl is the CISO and VP of Infrastructure at Boomi, which focuses on IT strategy and global operations. He was also at a bunch of really large organizations and managed a lot of money and budget and things like that. So with that being said, Gary and Carl, please come to the stage. Thank you very much.
You're going to meet Carl for the first time, too.
Yeah. Nice to meet you, Gary.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the intro. I appreciate it.
We're going to do this in a little bit of a goofy way, because instead of having a moderator and it'd be very canned, we have a couple questions for each other, and then we'll go back and forth. But really, it's about your questions at the end. So with that, we'll just start very simply. So I think I have the first question, and I think I have the first answer, too, which is a little odd.
Wing it.
Why was NHI security a top priority to begin with? And I'm going to be the contrarian, and actually, I'll step back one thing. You're the user, I'm the non-user. I'm the guy who's thinking, when is it time to invest, as was said before by CSA. For me, why is NHI a growing concern for folks like us? I'll answer it in a bunch of ways. One, because many of our other controls have gotten so much better. Phishing controls are so much better, vulnerability controls are so much better. A lot of the controls that used to be the tall timber we used to fight for are now a little bit easier to manage. They're not perfect. We still have vulnerability, we're still trying to meet SLAs, we still have third-party risks, we still have supply chain risks, but it's managed in a much better way. So with that, our adversaries have to find new ways in. And the demo we just saw is one of the new ways in. Another thing, and I was the CISO for Wells and Goldman and Citi and all these others, large enterprise problems versus where I am now. 100% SaaS. So I don't have any servers. They don't exist. There's no physical electronics we touch other than a laptop now and again. That changes the landscape completely. As was mentioned, sort of, is it, I don't care if it's 20, 20,000, 50,000 per 1,000 employees connections. That now is out of your sight. Whereas the old days, if you had a lot of heavy metal, you could go to the data center and you could look for those connections. You could cut off service accounts. You might have firewalls between different things. You could maybe have some controls. In a 100% SaaS environment, gone. It's very difficult for us to see that. Other thing that gets to me is some of the third-party breaches that were mentioned. And I would argue that some of the breaches that were mentioned aren't the ones I'm necessarily concerned with. I'm more concerned with the process that occurred after the initial breach, which generally is human. It's generally, somebody gives up their password, their username, your MFA gets broken. Once they do get inside, and I remember this back in my Citi days, there's some Citi friends of mine in the back, we used to have a severity 1 incident that we'd claim anytime a system account or username and password or everything was found in logs. And so we'd have to scrub all those load logs to get rid of that information. Now the logs look a lot different, much harder to manage, and I'm sure those secrets still exist. So when someone does get on the inside, it's opaque to most of us to see where they're going next. If you're lucky that you're using more and more human IDs to get from place to place, which are easier to manage. We have programs around to track. But once you get past that, in the NHI space, it's very difficult to see. Anyway, so I'll hand it over.
Thank you, Gary. Well said. Few things to add. Maybe I'll speak in a more pragmatic manner, but think about the intro when we first started the NHI conference. Think about Michael's scary demo. Think about the stats from CSA. If that doesn't tell you what an NHI program, what does? But for us, Boomi is an integration automation company. Right? All we do is connect things. Right? We don't have any data centers. Same thing. Back in the old days, you relied on your network perimeter and you tried to keep everything in your data center. Now everything's connected everywhere. Right? So, as any technologist at any company, you probably have POCs, you have integrations with systems, you have credentials that are sitting out there for years and years, no one's ever viewed them, right? And if you look at these public breaches that we were talking about earlier, people are gonna find those. AI tools are gonna find those. Humans don't have to scan anymore, right? Automated tools will go out and they'll find things in your environment that you don't see. So if you don't measure them and you don't inventory them first, someone will, right? That's essentially why you want to build an NHI program. The other piece here is, I think what was mentioned earlier is creation of credentials, which I thought was a very astute observation. We create them without a lot of rigor, a lot of governance, right? Now companies should think about, when I create a credential, it has to be thoughtful. It shouldn't be easy. You shouldn't trust an admin. You should go through a process, right? And then you should manage that life cycle, from end to end. So, if you're not looking at NHI, given what you've seen here today, it's something you should definitely take a focus on and look at. So. All right, well, we just talked about why an NHI program. Now the question is, what's your approach to solving the NHI security gap?
Yeah, it's easy to answer because my approach is now, like many of us, stare at the problem for a little bit. Try to understand, how would you actually do stuff? And so in the past year and a half, we spent a lot more time on API-related security and on cloud configuration security, both SaaS and cloud providers, which is raising the bar for us. But that gets me only so far. So, okay, so now I know my SaaS products that we're using, or I assume, are better configured. They're more secure. I also have a better inventory of my APIs. I don't necessarily know where they're being used, how they're being used, how frequently they're being used, for what purposes. Are they over-provisioned, under-provisioned? Where do you go from here? And I would have said 10, 20, 25 years ago, I'm not going to tackle it because it's the 8th most important problem I have. There's so many other things in my list that I have to get to. And I've been asked about system identities, system accounts for decades. And eventually the auditors get bored and stop asking because DLP or some other thing's more important in their list. But now I think we're at the bottom. The NHI is not the top 8th. It's not the 8th in line. It might be 2nd in line. It might be 3rd in line, but it's getting towards the top. So my approach so far has been inventory, has been better understand the surface area of my risk, and eventually, possibly this year, possibly next, we'll be attacking the NHI side from a pure security perspective. So today, it's really starting with inventory.
Yeah, no, great answer. If I could just add a little bit, agree with everything you said. I think it's a great approach. This is sort of a boil the ocean thing at first glance, but in fact, it's not, right? Look at your most critical systems. What do you use for quote to cash, your mega processes in every business, your product. Focus on those, protect those, and then spread out, right? So I think a pragmatic approach where you start the most critical systems. If you're a public company, look at your SOX applications. If you're a private company, again, look at your product, look at your quote to cash process. So I think you have to start, and once you start and you look at what's out there, you're sufficiently motivated to do more. I think that's how that's how those projects go.
And I'll add one more thing on why this is becoming a more critical thing, at least for companies like us. I work for iCapital, we're a fintech, and our clients, or our investors, are the largest banks in the world. And they ask us hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions every year, DDQs, or whatever terminology you use. And I'm always looking for the next wave. What's the next set of questions they're asking us to provide, which tells me what their auditors or their regulators or their board is asking them for. And NHI is on the list. It isn't on the list in a formal way. As we said, it's not in the standards today, but it's being asked by their lines of defense and their regulators, like, how are you managing these things? How are you getting into the cloud? And as those institutions do, they're going to come immediately to us and say, not just do you have these controls in place, like we used to just say, show them there are policies. They're asking for evidence. So that changes the game when you not only have to say you do it and squint your eyes maybe a little bit, you have to provide evidence that proves you're actually controlling that service area. So.
Great points.
All right. How has Boomy's automation mindset impacted, and how have you built your program?
Yeah, love that question. Well, being an automation integration company, when I think about security, especially in this space, I think about what I call active security. I don't want something that just shows me bells and whistles and green lights, red lights, yellow lights, right? If we see something bad, block it, control it, govern it, call an administrator, do something. So our approach, and in fact, I'll give a shout out to Asterix on this. We worked on some product enhancements early on, and I said, we should be doing X, Y, and Z, and we did. We're able to achieve it. And if you saw what I mentioned in my video earlier about workflows. Why not automate repetitive tasks, right, so that you secure yourself? Why leave these hanging, orphaned connections or risks out there? Why not just seal them up with a system and track it, right? Why leave them open? So for us, it's not just about knowing about things that are risky. It's about taking positive action and automating them where possible. And if not, having the right level of criticality so we can respond to it, very quickly. We obviously use our own automation platform, use a variety of tools to automate along with our products. And we're always looking for ways to improve and expand our surface area without putting a lot of human hours into it. Because at the end of the day, I think Gary will agree, we never have enough security people, right? And so the more you can, unless you know something I don't, Gary, but you're always looking for the system to do the work. And so that's an important part.
So I'll ask a follow-on. When you say automation, do you mean like UiPath RPA automation, or do you mean something else?
Well, we signed a deal with UiPath. Boomi also has automation. Asterisk also has automation. We use a variety of tools to automate. RPA is coming. So when we say automation, we typically look at our own platform first, and then we'll use tools to complement. But it could be something as simple as saying when you see a critical risk, don't wait for a human. Go and block it, pause it until we have a chance to discuss, right, and evaluate.
Yeah, just a kind of a thought experiment out to the audience is, if you have an intelligent automation program, like we think about like CrowdStrike, they're equivalent in that they both act as rootkits. Because your intelligent automation program, or UiPath, has all kinds of credentials. So we're building automation for some of the portals that we manage on behalf of some of our clients. And there's 80, 90,000 user accounts being logged into, and guess what? They're showing up, they're human accounts, but they're showing up almost as if they're non-human accounts, because that's how we're using them. That doesn't count all the interactions with other services that we plug into. So I hadn't really put a lot of thought into what that risk could look like if, again, rootkit-like piece of software has access to systems that isn't monitored in the same way behaviorally. So just a thought.
Yeah. Well, I think another thing here is for those of you who use collaboration suites, Google, Microsoft, if you allow your users to add plugins or integrations, I mean, who's looking at that on a constant basis? You could have hundreds, thousands, right? And are you evaluating those? And, is the reputation of those companies in question? Are they giving access to email for someone in the company that's critical? And, that's what leads to the supply chain attacks and those things. So, unless you block everything, which will kill productivity, you have to have active ways to measure and react to it, right? Or else it's going to be sort of a drain on your resources. Well,
okay. I think we're out of town. Didn't mean to be the host, but we're here for questions for 10 minutes.
I've been chomping at the bit. I actually have a question for each of you, different questions for each of you. So, Gary, you mentioned the banks are starting to ask difficult questions around non-human identity security. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts around whether or not cyber insurers are angling towards that as well. And then, Carl, for your API gateway capabilities in Boomi, why shouldn't your customers treat you as an NHI security as a service?
Okay. Insurers are not asking. We're about to increase our cyber insurance. I'm probably going to answer some emails to that today. I think they're still going by, CSA or whatever top 20 that we used to call it. I don't think they have the sophistication to ask that level of questions. Auditors, I used to say when I was at one of my previous jobs, we were faced with 9 lines of defense. If you understand the lines of defense model and all the controls along it, it felt like 9 lines were asking for things. And each line had to be smarter than the one in front of them to find something new. And NHI is just around the corner, is my guess.
Just to repeat the question, why shouldn't customers treat us like an NHI provider? Was that? Should they? Oh, should they? I see. Well, being a company that integrates and connects, right? We have thousands of connectors. We deal with system accounts all over the place. And we're an integration automation platform. We're not necessarily going to expose additional risk because we have layers of protection, our product on credentials and APIs. We have an API management product, et cetera. So I think Boomi helps protect endpoints. I don't want to make this a plug about Boomi. I want to talk more generally, but whether it's us or any other integration platform as a service, connector company, the customer is always responsible for their credentials, and the platform that they use is going to manage them, and they're responsible for protecting. There's a whole shared responsibility model and all these types of things out there. But we protect credentials, other providers do, and so you should look at us as a platform to connect all your systems. You should look at us as a system to protect those credentials as well. But we're not a security company, we're an integration automation company.
Yeah, I would,
good,
I would say
we're
he's
good.
lying. He's a rootkit. Any other questions?
I think more a comment. Both of you seem to build software, but neither of you talked about the CI/CD pipeline or infrastructure as code and the credentials that are required to go and manage building a software and deploying it out into various different environments. Do you have a particular thought about how NHI and those environments fit together?
I'll let you start.
Yeah, well, you saw the tools that can be used to expose secrets. So in your CI/CD pipeline, you should be scanning for secrets, credentials all the time. You should also be scanning your public repos, which, you know, there are tools out there to do that actively. So very important that a developer doesn't take a convenient way out and put a key or secret in code and then publish it somewhere that people can get to it. So very important, not only in just, you know, developing software, but accessing systems. And if you don't have a secret scanner or some way to do that in your CI/CD pipeline, you're going to find, you know, keys all over the place, right, in systems you didn't consider.
Yeah, similar, we have a very active, I would say, code analysis program from start to finish and all the branches. And I'm not the expert in code development, but I feel comfortable that we have good controls in place. At the same time, we are in the process of integrating a couple of the software packages we have together and tearing apart the core, which was 10-year-old code that we started our company with. That's where I'm going to dig in. That's the next wave I'm going to be focused on. And we haven't had as much security around controlling how Gits are used at our company from an outside, their accessibility. And it's just, I'll tell, it's not a dirty secret, but what's true. The head of our technology said, if someone steals our code, I don't really care, because what we make isn't necessarily a top secret. People could create another one. We're just in a small market, so we don't think anyone's going to try and copy what we do. At the same time, I don't want the code out in the marketplace. So it's a, you know, again, another reason why NHI is on my hot list for the rest of this year and next. More questions? More questions? You want to go on my mind?
And so I'm trying not to step on the feet of the panel that we have later on, but one of the things that is coming to mind is that we don't have a good story around human identities. How do you tell the story about non-human identities in a way that is not fear, uncertainty, and doubt? Because in my experience, that is the easiest way to turn people off and say we're not going to do it, because it's just, it's negative. It's
We're swapping so much for COVID. What I would say is, and this is a phrase I use fairly often, this particular risk, non-human identity, is an off-balance sheet risk. So when you go to your management, you're like, okay, we have an off-balance sheet risk. You know, so we have this whole risk over here that you're not paying attention to, and I'm not necessarily paying attention to, and we're focused on human, as you said, user identity, user frequency, how users are interacting with systems. That's always going to be a risk. It's never going to go away. But you can't ignore what I'm calling non-human identity as an off-balance sheet risk, and you have to begin investing in that as part of your program. It shouldn't be 100%. It shouldn't be, oh my God, we're going to die tomorrow. But you can't do nothing. And that's an argument I bring to my management, I bring to boards for a long time, about how when SolarWinds occurred, I was at Wells, and some of the connectivity-related risks that they highlighted was an off-balance sheet risk. And so I was able to fund a program to build on top of what we were already doing. Can't always do that, but in this case, I would present it that way.
Yeah, I think everyone has their list of what allows them to not, what prevents them from sleeping at night, right? And you present them in different ways. I think one of the ways that you can use is everyone reads the news. Oop, I think we're too close, crossing the streams. So everyone reads the news, and usually your board or your executives will send you an email and say, what are we doing about this? That's a great catalyst right there, right? And if you don't have an answer, you need to get one. So I think it's being preemptive, anticipating those needs, and making sure you have a good story to tell is one really good way. But at the end of the day, it is risk, and you do have to present it as such, and you present the benefits and investments you need to solve it. I think this risk in sort of the category of other threat vectors, it's a high risk. Yeah.
Let me answer it in a slightly different way. Managing system accounts was a risk that was unattainable. You really couldn't address. And if you did, you would have thousands of people trying to do it, and your coders, your environment, everyone would hate you. Tools exist today. And these cloud tools, Asterisk being one, lots of others, are the types of tools you can implement relatively inexpensively, relatively quickly, and if you don't get the yield, you can turn them off. So I would also contend a lot of the security products that are available today, tied to SaaS, enable you to flip a switch relatively simply with low investment and see if you get yield. And if you don't, then you can turn them off. So I think the barrier to entry across the security is incredibly different than it was 25 years ago when I started, when you were buying 100 servers to get things started. Anyway, I think we're out of time. Thanks for your time. There was one more in the back, I guess.
How did you go around operationalizing the findings that you had without causing a disruption?
Without causing disruption?
Yep.
Great question. We put one person on the product and we said, go and find things and start fixing them, right? And what we came across is some things were low-hanging fruit, where it's like it's an integration or an account that hasn't been used in a long time. Some were not, and we had to go through change control processes and evaluations. We have a CAB, just like as I'm sure most of you do. So I think the way to look at this is if you're touching a critical system, treat it like any critical change, right? You have to test it. You have to put it in a lab, in a staging environment, et cetera. But really start with the low-hanging fruit, gain some confidence, have your technical team gain confidence, have your executive team gain confidence, and then continue to build on it. You don't want to start with the most critical system of the company and bring it down, right? That's not something you'd want to risk.
I'll add a sort of a stupid anecdote. The way I approach any new operational issue like this is look for a lot of stupid. Look for a lot of connectivity that shouldn't be there. Look for a lot of somebody put credentials in the wrong place and it keeps doing the same thing over and again, and it's like hitting the head against the wall. But in stupid, you'll find malicious. So as you said, you can start with lower risk systems, but look across your horizon, look for issues, try to just peel off what looks like just the canary in a coal mine kind of stupid stuff. And in there, you'll find the bad stuff.
Totally agree. Yeah, threat vulnerability team, you add it to an existing team to help operationalize it, build some SOPs, knowledge bases, right? It should fit somewhere in one of your teams. So, a great question.
I think we're done. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.